Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again, back with more Neighbors from Hell stories. In this video, my entitled neighbor called the cops on me when I am sunbathing in my pool. She then wants me trespassed from my own property and arrested. Here is what happened. The title story goes like this. This is the story of how my Karen neighbor finally got on my last nerve and I got some revenge and ruined her entire life. So, like most of her kind, this Karen hated me for the simple reason of jealousy. My house and property were nicer than hers and she was never able to get over that fact. I knew that it burned her up when she had company and they would stop to look at my property and make comments about how nice it looked. Most of the reasoning stemmed from Karen simply not taking care of her property, while the rest sat with mine just being bigger. Just looking at the external of our homes, I made sure to plant beautiful flowers of various colors for the reason that it brings me joy. I also make sure my trees, scrubs and lawn are cut and maintained. Karen is too busy worrying about how she looks, so while her property is not overgrown or anything, it just looks basic and boring. There does not seem to be any life going on from the outside, so naturally people's eyes get drawn to mine. Another thing Karen hates is that my property was large enough to get a pool installed in the back, while she would never be able to have that kind of space. I don't try and gloat or show off that I have more than Karen either, she is just internally doing all of this. While some people would be jealous and just sit and stew on the whole thing, Karen is not like that. She needs to act out because of it, and her favorite method of that is trying to get me in trouble for some reason. She has called so many different departments to try and get me in trouble for things that don't actually exist. I don't know if she thinks they won't actually come and check on things before blindly giving me fines or arresting me. These kinds of departments do come when there is a complaint and see if it is valid before doing anything. For example, she called the health department on me claiming that I was living in a squalor and rats and other vermin were overtaking the house. They came and checked both the outside and inside of my property to see that it was clean and neat. Of course, it was not perfect or anything, since the house is being lived in. A salsa stain on a couch cushion and my desk being a mess of papers was hardly a health hazard though. And then there was the time she decided to call CPS on me, which I have to admit was one of the funniest things that has ever happened. They came to tell me there had been reports of child abuse in the home and they had to check it out. They looked all over the house to make sure that things were safe while shutting me up every time I tried to get a word in. It was not until the question portion of the visit that I got to explain to them that I could not possibly be abusing my children because I did not have any. Karen literally knew so little that she tried to get kids that I did not even have taken away from me. The CPS person apologized for cutting me off from telling them sooner. She must have been getting frustrated that none of her plans were working. It was the summer and I decided to sunbathe in the pool. I had bought basically an inflatable reclined chair so I could be both on the water but not in it. I was wearing a bikini and just reading a book, having a drink and taking in some sun. It was my day of work and I was gonna make sure that I got the most out of it. It was almost like she could sense that I was enjoying myself because it did not take long for her to look over the fence and start screaming at me from her backyard. I got a locked gate, or I'm sure she would have just walked into my yard to yell at me instead. Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing? Me enjoying my day off and getting yelled at by you for no reason. You cannot be out in public wearing something like that. You're exposing yourself and children live in the neighborhood. Me, actually I am in the privacy of my own backyard. The only person that can see me is you, and that's because you're nosy. Karen, I'm gonna make sure you're punished for this. She walked away and as you can tell, I've lost all patience and politeness when it comes to Karen. I will just give it right back to her and let her know that I think she's just being an entitled witch. I had no idea who she was gonna call, but I didn't think that it would be the police. I expected another random department to be at my house at some point for a dangerous pool or some other stupid thing. They came to my gate and knocked on it before saying it was police and to let them in. I got out of the pool and opened the gate to let them into the yard. I was curious to know what Karen said to get them to come so quickly. Me, is there a problem, officer? Officer, we got a report that you were exposing yourself in front of children. Me, I was in my backyard sunbathing in my pool. That locked gate is the only way in besides going through the house, so no kids could get in even if they wanted. Karen was now back peeking over the fence. Karen, you have to arrest that woman. She is naked on public property and I want her arrested for indecent exposure and trespassing. Officer, ma'am, please return to your home and let us handle this. He then turns to me. Officer, so you've been back here the entire time by yourself? Yes, I even have cameras if you want to see. No need, your story seems to check out. And you're the owner of this property? Me? Yes. Me and my husband own the home. Officer, and that is what you've been wearing the entire time you were outside, yeah? Yes. Okay, well, everything seems to check out. Enjoy the rest of the day. I guess Karen had been listening on her side of the fence because when she heard the police were just going to leave, she got pissed off. She was mad that I was not being arrested and insisted that a bikini was me being naked, and if she could see me, that meant children could too. The officer told her that if she didn't want to see, she shouldn't be peeking at me over the fence. It was hard for me not to laugh at that moment. Despite it being a little funny, I was at my wit's end with Karen. I knew that if I did not do something soon, I was gonna end up with police or somebody else coming to my house all the time. I wanted to relax in my life, but that wasn't possible with the looming threat of my house being examined or police showing up at any given time. All it would take is one case of bad timing for a misunderstanding to occur. If I got drunk and Karen made some claim that I was driving and I couldn't refute it. I did not want to live that way. I was gonna get some grade A revenge on Karen, but first I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. First I thought about maybe ruining her job so that she might end up having to just move away from me. I knew what she did because she never stopped talking about it and trying to drag other people into it. That's right, she was part of a pyramid scheme and I think she was too dumb to even realize it. She kept getting sucked into them too because she always tried to go to everybody and get them to either purchase from her or join in too. And every single time it was a different kind of product. It was her husband bringing in the real money, but he was not mean, so I didn't want to try and ruin his life and career too. So then I had to think of something else creative in order to get back at her. It was about a week later when the idea came to me and I loved the irony of it. I was gonna find some reason to call a department on her so she would be the one with people coming to her door for a change. Unlike what she does though, I was gonna find a legitimate reason that would actually get her in trouble. I had no idea of what, but a person like Karen for sure was doing something that she shouldn't have been. I just had to find out what it was and then capitalize on it. I finally got my ammo when I overheard her talking on the phone outside to one of her friends. She was bragging about a secret bank account that she was putting her husband's money in instead of paying bills like she was supposed to. She was stealing his money and planning on using it to leave him. To make things worse, she was making false statements to the bank about money never being received properly or something like that. And then telling the bill collector something else too. It was clear that she was both screwing over her husband and committing some kind of fraud. Now, I did not know exactly who to call about that kind of thing, but I did mention her talking about taxes in her little plan, so I decided to call the IRS. I told them that I suspected her to be committing fraud and it reflecting on her taxes. Now I am actually just gonna pause this part of the story and jump to the other thing I did. Since her husband was totally sane, unlike her, I felt comfortable approaching him and telling him everything that I heard his wife saying. He was going through so many different emotions at once and I could see the wheels turning. He admitted to me that he thought his job was not submitting the right amount of pay and he was causing such a stink he might have gotten fired for it, not knowing that she had just been stealing some of his salary instead of paying the bills, and thus forcing him to pay the bills with the remainder of the money and not having much left over. Now, I would never want to ruin somebody's marriage, but she was already planning on leaving him anyway. I just wanted to help make sure that since it was happening anyway, that she did not get away with a bunch of his money. And yes, I know, in divorce he will probably end up having to give her some of his income, but getting that on top of a bunch she stole was just horrible to do, especially since they were married, so you would think somewhere in her mind she would feel bad about screwing him over like this. The way she talked to her friend made it seem like she got pure joy over screwing him over and getting away with things. You could hear the screaming from their house, probably 3 doors down, with the fight that they had. I did feel a bit guilty, but he was mostly the one yelling and she deserved it. I could even hear him threatening to call the police because she stole from him. The money apparently was not in a joint account but in his personal account that she had taken out of, stealing the card and going to the ATM, and I assume guessed or just knew the PIN. The police never did come and the screaming died down. To just end this part of the story before jumping back to the other one, they did get a divorce. From what I managed to gather, she was forced by the court to return all of the money that she took out of his account and put into a new private one. Then they went through the process and she only was gonna get what she was entitled to. Of course, I only knew all of this because Karen continued to think it was a smart idea to talk loudly on the phone to her friend outside. Karen, I cannot believe this. Just because he got fired and claimed it was because of me, I'm getting so much less a month than I expected. That's why I had that cushion, but they decided to swoop in and take that away from me too. Plus, I owe all that other money because the IRS found out about me trying to hide the funds, so it cannot be taxed. It's my money. I don't know why the government thinks they should get a piece of it. I should have hid it outside the country so they couldn't touch it. She pauses to listen to whatever her friends have to say. Karen, no, well, I wanted to sell the house and just split the profit down the middle. The court insisted that I cannot take my half until the mortgage is taken out. That is gonna leave me with so little. I have to call the doctor and cancel because I won't have the money for the new implants. She was talking about plastic surgery for her chest, by the way. I cut some of the conversation because I don't find it relevant and the story is already getting long. Also, yeah, her first statement kind of gives away what happened with the IRS. I actually didn't know that they had followed up with what I said until that point. Trying to find out any information about what happened there was pretty hard. I knew she was a gossip that loved to talk about herself, even if it was about issues she was having. Of course, she hated me and wouldn't tell me, but there were plenty of other neighbors. Some, like her, are just as big gossips and were willing to give other the information just to be able to talk about Karen. So anyway, the IRS did look into her money situation and found stuff that I did not even know about. Of course, they was trying to hide her husband's money under the lie of it not existing and not claiming that when it came to taxes. That was just a drop in the bucket though. Remember when I mentioned that her job was basically getting involved in pyramid schemes? Well, in order to actually make money off of them, she was scamming a lot of people that she sold to. They would send her the money and then she just would not send them the product. Even if they complained to their banks, she would by then have withdrawn the money and closed that account, or she would have given them her money through a third-party app. Opening and closing a bunch of bank accounts was very suspicious to the IRS, and it was not hard to find proof of what she was doing. Of course, you can guess that she was claiming her income was nothing the entire time and she was just a housewife. They gave her a huge fine of money that she owed them for taxes. After all was said and done, they had both moved out of the neighborhood and I was finally free of Karen. She had spent 2 years of my life pulling crap to try and get me into trouble out of pure jealousy. I did not think my revenge would end up being that good, but it felt amazing to finally stick it back to her. Helping her husband not get screwed over was just an added bonus that went along with the entire thing. And yeah, Ripe Stars, please let me know in the comments what you thought about this story. I for one am really happy about what happened to Karen in the end, and I just cannot imagine having an awful neighbor like this. I am very fortunate to live in a non-toxic neighborhood. Entitled neighbor's driveway encroached over my property line. I built a fence and blocked him in. Next to my home lives a man that seems to have a lot of money that he enjoys spending on himself. He does not seem to have kids, so it is just his wife and him to spend money on all sorts of luxury things. This alone does not bother me because I have no idea where his money comes from, but I guess he earned it and can spend it however he wants. The problem really is that my neighbor is a huge jerk, not only to me, but everyone else that he comes in contact with. When I go to work, he likes to laugh about how I work all day and still drive an old car that has no style. He can clearly see that I have 3 kids and obviously will put most of my money into that instead, and it doesn't end there. He always complains when my kids are playing on the lawn, saying how they are going to ruin something, and even though it is my property, it will somehow make him look bad. His wife is always telling my wife that her husband is the greatest because he buys her designer stuff and I could learn a thing or two from her husband. Somebody telling my wife that I'm not a good husband because I cannot afford to get her the best brands really rubs me the wrong way. From what I can hear from some friends around town, when he is out and about, he is also at the store commenting when people buy things that are more on the cheaper side. The thing I hate the most though is one thing that he always does with his car in the driveway. He likes to rev it very loudly for no reason at very odd hours and wake everybody up. One time I had to run out at like 2 in the morning telling him to knock it off because it was the middle of the night and it woke up me and all of my kids. If you have never tried getting a 2-year-old back to sleep after being woken up, let me tell you that it's not an easy thing. When I would go out to tell him, he would intentionally rev it even louder and act like he could not even hear what I was saying. Oh, why don't I just talk to him when he is not in the car being an a-hole? Well, I thought that too and tried to go over and talk to him when I saw him one day. It did not end well and was just more crap about me being jealous and that he was not going to dial back his life so I could feel better about myself. So I wanted some revenge on this guy to teach him a lesson, and I had what I thought was a good idea. Not only did he like to deal with his car at odd hours, but he also liked to leave the top of his car down even when he wasn't in it. This gave me an evil idea and I decided to take his advice to spend a little money on something luxury. My garden was next to the driveway and I decided that it really deserved some sprinklers as close to his car as I could get while still being on my property. If you cannot see where I'm going with this, I was planning on setting the sprinklers to go off in the middle of the night and get him and his car interior soaked. The only issue was I did not know exactly where my property started and his began, I just knew it was in that general area. I was friends with the guy who does surveying for the town though, and he agreed to come out and unofficially take a look at where the line was so I could install the sprinklers. What he found was so much better and put a stop to my plans for water-based revenge. So I need to pause the story to tell you how exactly his driveway is shaped. The start of it is in the direction of my house and then goes back towards his. Maybe think of like a question mark but upside down and without the dot. My friend told me that the starting part of the driveway was actually all considered my land and he had built his driveway thinking that the whole thing belonged to him. If it was anybody else, I honestly would not have cared they were doing it and let them since things like that don't bother me. Since it was this horrible man though, I wanted to get revenge and I thought of something better that would also not potentially cause me getting sued for car damage. I built a fence that went right through his driveway and now he did not really have any way to enter it through the street. As you can guess, he was not happy that I did this and started screaming about how I cannot do this and the driveway is on his land and he is going to get me sued. I calmly told him that if he gets a survey saying that the driveway is on his land, I will take down the fence right away. He tried and found that I was right and my fence was allowed to stand because it was on my property. He was fuming and telling me that he had to take the fence down because there was no other way for him to park his car on his property. There was really no good way for him to go around either, because his gate was in the way and if he tried going around on my side, a tree would block him. I don't know what I'm going to do next because I know that he's not going to stay parked on the streets forever. My guess is that he will build a new driveway that is totally on his property. For now though, at least I can sleep with my family and not worry about this guy making crazy noise with his car in the middle of the night. I think whatever they are planning to do about it is costing them a lot of money because I noticed that his wife, while still dressing in fancy clothing, is wearing stuff that's a little bit cheaper. I don't know what he's going to do once he gets back, but I always have that sprinkler idea in my back pocket if he wants to start with me again. They have stopped talking to us completely, which I think is a miracle because I was sick of being told how to take care of my wife by this jerk. I hope he learned that when a guy nobody likes messes with somebody who has friends all over town, it can end with you getting into some serious trouble. And yeah, Ripe stars once again an entitled rich person that decides to mess with others purely because he thinks that he can afford everything, ends with him totally getting embarrassed. That is the kind of revenge stories that I enjoy. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.